What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome into our next divisional draft grades breakdown. Before we get started, I appreciate if you could hit that like button down below to show your support. Hoping to be cranking out the rest of the 4 divisions that we have not done yet throughout the rest of the day. Gonna be a grind, but hoping to wrap up draft season here today. And we're gonna start here in the AFC East, talking about who got the most bang for their buck, the best scheme fits, the best players, you name it. Let's go ahead and grade these drafts, starting with the Buffalo Bills. Definitely a different looking type of draft than you typically see, and with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott here, goes this strategy that we saw here really goes back to their time in Carolina, 2014, 2015, where we saw a couple drafts down there where they would actually throw a couple darts at positions of need and see what stuck. And it's one of my favorite draft philosophies. It can be overdone if you do it too much, but I think it was well deployed here for the Bills. And looking at this here, it couldn't be any more obvious that they felt edge and offensive tackle were very important needs for them. As far as if offensive tackle was a need for them, that's debatable. They just gave Williams at right tackle a contract extension. They just gave Deion Dawkins a contract extension about a year ago. Very good tackles, but perhaps they see really athletic guys in Brown and Doyle, and we're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, but as potentially like high upside elite tackles if they can be developed well here. So I guess we just graded their 3rd and 5th round picks first, where I gave them B and B+. But let's talk about the meat of the draft here with their first 2 picks. They end up going with Gregory Rousseau, who's one of my guys in this draft. And man, I think this is excellent value in the first round. There are people that hate Gregory Rousseau. I don't think it's even close. You could argue Mac Jones, who we're going to talk about later in this video, is the other most hated on player in this class, but Gregory Rousseau might be the most hated player by pretty much everybody I saw that I've ever seen, and he's a polarizing player as well because of the COVID season. He played 1 year at Miami as a raw athlete, high school commit, came in at 6'7", didn't really know what he was doing, and actually had a productive season. Now, stats are the stats, but I did see a lot of traits, redeemable traits in Gregory Rousseau. People love to focus on that 3-cone, but that's not his game. I don't care if he can't necessarily get the edge and bend the corner. I've gone on rants about how that's incredibly overrated in today's game where these quarterbacks are too athletic. They just step up against these speed rushers that go around the edge. They get rid of the ball too quickly for those long developing pass rush moves to work. To be honest, power rushers are in nowadays, and Gregory Rousseau has a lot of power. People love to focus on that 7.5 3-cone, but nobody brought up the fact that he had the best 10-yard split of any edge player in my top 10 rankings and pretty much the consensus top 10 rankings. So, to me, one of the most underrated players in this class. I did have a 1st to a 2nd round grade on him, and I'm glad to see a smart organization value a player like Gregory Rousseau, who I think is going to have a great opportunity to develop and be something like a Arik Armstead. Marcus Davenport's a decent comparison, but he hasn't really developed as well as you'd like to see. But I think he can be a high-end number 2 pass rusher and be a long-time Buffalo Bill here. So I really like that pick. And then they take Carlos Basham in the 2nd. A little bit redundant there, right? These big-body edge rushers. They have AJ Epinesa. But I think this is very smart. If you go back to my mock drafts, I was just going D-line for them, whether it's interior or edge. And there's a world where these guys can actually all contribute, even if AJ Epinesa works out, because Epinesa, Basham, Rousseau, all very good rushing from the interior as well. So with Jerry Hughes getting up there in age, they're like, crap, we gotta get this pass rush ready to go for the future. And I agree with that philosophy. So it's good value. He's a really good football player. He's a deeper edge class than people realize. And getting him at the end of the 2nd, I think you're not always able to get a player like that. So between those 3, I think they will have a much improved pass rush. But beyond that, you're really not getting any impact here. And I don't love all the players they picked. We talked about the tackles. I think that was decent investment. Questionable, though, because that tackle position, I would say, is a position of strength for their team at this point in time. But moving down the board into the 6th round, they take Marquez Stevenson. Definitely needed to go to a place like this with a quarterback that can launch it deep, a system that'll allow him to be, that just deep ball threat, basically like John Brown. Is not a terrible comparison for Marquez Stevenson. He's not as good as John Brown yet, but he's going to make this team and could develop into a starting deep threat for them. So that was a good pick in the 6th round. And then Damar Hamlin, Rashad Wildgoose, a couple of defensive backs there. Weren't really my guys necessarily, but they definitely needed depth. I like the idea of taking Damar Hamlin to learn behind Hyde and Poyer. Eventually you're going to need a safety. I don't know if Damar Hamlin is going to be the guy that turns into a starter for them, but he can play special teams. And then Rashad Wildgoose, definitely some fog of war on his evaluation coming out as a junior. Basically played in the slot there in Wisconsin. Not a great cover player, not a great athlete, but he's got a great first step. He's a good tackler. He's going to play special teams. He could also be a safety for them. But they've got the slot corner kind of in place already with Teron Johnson. So, we'll see. And then they take Jack Anderson, a really tenured collegiate guard with a lot of pass protection experience, but his technique's pretty bad, to be honest, for a guy that graded out so well. So we'll see if he makes the team. He's got really strong arms, but his footwork being a concern for me. At the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills get a B grade for me. I don't think it was a bad draft. I love that they addressed the pass rush early on, and I like that strategy. But beyond that, I don't get too stoked about this draft, but it's certainly far from a bad draft. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins, and Dolphins fans are just waiting on me to shred this class. I've kind of become this self-proclaimed Dolphins hater, apparently. I don't hate the Dolphins. I love Brian Flores. I think he's done an amazing job down there. I enjoy that organization. I want to see them succeed. I just don't always agree with the direction they've gone from a front office perspective, and I'm going to be honest and critical of that when it happens. But really seeing this draft play out, I like what they did quite a lot. And I didn't love the Jalen Waddle pick at first. I think they went in this in a bit of a roundabout way, and maybe not necessarily what I would have done, but I see the way they did it, and I definitely think this is a good draft class. So much better than last year. People always criticize me like, oh, you don't know better than these front offices. Like, why should we take your opinion, blah, blah, blah. And there's an element of that. Like, I'm not going to be right about every single player. I realize that. But I do, at a certain point in time, trust my evaluations. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours diving into this class, grading these players, and I do this for a reason. I'm going to trust my eyes at a certain point, and I called it out last year. I said the Dolphins draft last year, it's not that they got bad football players. It's just that you had all those picks in the top 50, and I don't think they delivered. And looking back on that class, I did not have Tua as my number 2 quarterback. I thought he was a lower upside pick. I could still be wrong on that, but that's looking like a good prediction. You had Austin Jackson, I said could get there, but with the 18th pick, that's early. You're not going to get an impact from him, and he was not good as a rookie. He was fine, but he has a lot of work to do. Noah Igbenogany, I said, was a fine pick, but he's your 3rd corner. Go invest in Tua. Don't focus on a slot corner. Robert Hunt, I said, was a reach. He's not a right tackle. He's a right guard. People are like, no, he's a right tackle. Well, here he is in year 2. They just slid him into right guard. And you could even go down the board, and I thought Raekwon Davis and Solomon Kinley were the best bang for their buck, and that just might prove out to be true. So definitely an example of these draft grades not being a waste of time. I think I nailed the Dolphins draft grade last year, but here we are this year. I'm not a hater on the Dolphins. They had a really good draft here. I will be slightly curious about the Jalen Waddle pick. I'm not trying to destroy Tua here. I think this draft gives him a chance to be a good quality starter for a long time. But the reality is, Tua is not going to be this gunslinging Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen type of quarterback that opens up an offense like that. There's room for a deep threat here with Tua, but you did just sign Will Fuller. So that puts Jalen Waddle into a, catch and run slot role in this offense, which has value, but not the value of the 6th overall pick. You could have gone potentially with a Penei Sewell here, and then maybe you go for, say, Rondale Moore or something like that to play that catch and run role. I don't know. That would just be my only criticism there as far as doing it in a kind of a roundabout way, maybe not maximizing the value, but not going to go too far into that point. You get a hell of a football player in Jalen Waddle regardless. I just question if his ceiling is going to be maximized here in this offense. But beyond that, Jalen Phillips at 118, perfect landing spot. I think this has added value and confidence, the fact that they are the Miami Dolphins. They could go down the street and literally pick his brain, not just from a football perspective, but find out how legit are these concussion issues. Is he going to be able to stay here and be worth the top 20 pick? They felt good about it. I don't have that information, so I will trust them on that. And if he's on the field, they may have stolen the best defensive player in this class, at least the most valuable one being that pass rusher with the 18th pick. I mean, this guy is a freak. His tape speaks for itself. And I also like that Brian Flores is kind of going in his own direction here because, yes, he's got the Belichick ties, but Bill never invests in a pass rusher like this, that alpha type that you have to spend a top pick on, that you have to eventually pay a ton of money. And that's what you do with Jalen Phillips here, but there's a reason those guys make that much money. I think pass rush is extremely important, and Jalen Phillips does play with that power that we talked about earlier with Gregory Rousseau. So really excited to see what he can do for this defense. I think he really raises the bar. If they were going to repeat the amount of turnovers that they produced last year, I did think that pass rush was going to have to uptick, and I think it did. Getting Jalen Phillips in there, and Shaq Lawson's going to be out, which is a big pass rush upgrade. And then they go with Javon Holland. This was a good call by me. I had Javon Holland as safety number 1. It was definitely a surprise over Trayvon Merrick. So they get my number 1 safety here with a first to a second round grade in the at pick 36. And this reminds me a lot of Antoine Winfield Jr. plugging into an already talented Bucs secondary last year. I think he plays a lot of strong safety there. I think he'll rotate high at times, could eventually become the Devin McCourty of this defense. But just adding another first round, dominant coverage player, and he's going to wear a lot of hats for this defense. I think it's a big upgrade to that just second safety spot that was a bit of an eyesore for me when I looked at their roster. I think that's a great pick. And then it all comes together getting Liam Eichenberg in the middle of the second round here. And you plug him in at right tackle. I think this was my hesitation with those first 3 picks when we were live. I was like, I like these picks, but when are we going to see that tackle get upgraded? And they do it here. They take advantage of the good tackle class, and they get, what did I have Eichenberg? My 6th offensive tackle, I believe. And I love this pick, man. He is ready to go, left or right tackle. I think he can do both. And watching him play reminds me a little bit of like David Bakhtiari, a little bit of Mitchell Schwartz, in that maybe not the most physically gifted player, although he is very quick. But you see the footwork combined with some of the best hands and just technique overall across the board. He's super refined, and I think protecting Tua's blind side at the right side, depending what they do with Eichenberg and Jackson, either way, you're upgrading this offensive line. And it's the same thing I've talked about with drafting a tackle here. You slide Hunt into right guard. I really appreciate that they acknowledge that Robert Hunt is not the right tackle you want in there to support Tua. So overall, a great draft for the Miami Dolphins. It does continue. They get Hunter Long in the 3rd round. Great value for me, or just solid value. He's a 3rd round prospect. He is the perfect counterpart to Mike Gesicki, who's not really a tight end. Let's be honest. Hunter Long is a reliable, chain-moving, just stick guy, red zone threat. I think Kyle Rudolph was my comparison for Hunter Long. I think that's just a really good pick, even though they have Shaheen there. You're going to be able to play all those guys. And then Larnell Coleman in the 7th round is a good investment. Even, if Austin Jackson can't continue to grow, you have another freaky athlete there. Larnell Coleman has 36-inch arms. Really, impressive physical specimen just coming out of Massachusetts. Going to have a learning curve there. And then they take Jared Dokes, kind of a power back. Whatever. Running back, 7th round. We'll see what happens. He was my 30th ranked running back, but I'm not going to shred it. Overall, the Miami Dolphins get an A-. I'm not a Miami Dolphins hater. I'm very happy to see them get value, get real first-round talent, valuable positions, receiver, edge, safety, tackle. Love this draft for the Miami Dolphins. Definitely feel better about the Dolphins as a whole now as opposed to how I felt 4 days ago. And I think this is also going to give Tua a chance to become that consistent, steady, quality starting quarterback that I think he can be. And then speaking of looking for a steady top 20 quarterback, the New England Patriots are up, who drafted Mac Jones in the 1st round. I love this pick, man. I absolutely love it. Mac Jones, like I said, with Gregory Rousseau, one of the most hated on prospects in this class. Yeah, he was QB5 in this class. Yes, it was silly that the media was playing up this idea that the Niners were going to take him number 3, and maybe they were thinking about him for a while. And at that point, I do understand laughing about Mac Jones, but let's be honest, he's a real first-round quarterback prospect. I think he's incredibly comparable to Tua last year coming out. Maybe even better. I changed my grading scale this year, so it's difficult to say, but I'd been saying Tua was worth about a 12 to 20 overall pick last year, and now Mac Jones coming out, I would have said about the same thing. And he is a guy that I think comes in as a quality starter, and he could still benefit from learning and sitting for a year. Yeah, he's not Patrick Mahomes where he's going to really take that step up from a mental side, but any rookie's going to benefit from sitting and learning. And I think that's probably what we see here. It's also going to motivate Cam Newton. And what this does for me is it gives you a clean 5-year window with a cheap rookie contract for Bill Belichick, who just loaded up this defense, loaded up the offensive line, loaded up the playmakers, and you say, go have that formula. Sorry, Patriots fans, the formula that won you a bunch of Super Bowls here, which is elite defense and a game-managing quarterback. And that's what's going to happen here with Mac Jones. A great offensive line, potentially elite running game as well. We'll talk about the Ramondre Stevenson pick later. That makes a ton of sense. So I just like this pick as a whole. No, it's not Justin Fields. It's not opening this up to be a consistent top 10 offense or anything like that. But I think it just makes so much sense for the window that Bill Belichick at his age that he's trying to create with the amount of players and depth that they have. They're going to be able to keep a lot of these guys in-house because Mac Jones is only going to be making, what, $5-6 million, maybe less with the 15th overall pick? Outstanding move, and they didn't have to trade up to get him either. I said all along, if he's there at 15, they're going to take him, and they did. And then they take Christian Barmore with the 6th pick. So if you don't like the Mac Jones pick, flip him in your mind, Patriots fans. Say you get Barmore at 15, who, if you're banking on him to kind of be this gym rat and develop, well, Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are about as tight as any two bros in this country could be. And if Christian Barmore wasn't going to develop at the next level, if Saban didn't think he had good work behavior to continue to grow as a guy that was the clear-cut number 1 D tackle already in this class, Saban would have told him. So I think Barmore is going to turn into a star defensive tackle for them. Could be the best D tackle they've had in 10 years someday, but year 1 he's going to be that pass rushing specialist for them, but they got plenty of peace on the inside. Love that landing spot for Christian Barmore. That's an A+ pick for me. I thought that kind of 3 technique position was one of the spots on this defense that could have upgraded, along with linebacker, what they got later. Ronnie Perkins was just too good to pass up in the 3rd round. I mean, this is the definition of how Bill Belichick goes about that edge group. He's a guy that will play that outside linebacker position really well, generate some push. They've got some bodies in there, but you can't have enough pass rushers like Ronnie Perkins. Again, the value is just too good to pass up. I don't know how much he's going to get on the field this year, but they'll be happy to have him. And then Ramondre Stevenson. So I had a fit to a priority free agent grade on him. That's just because he was a running back with off-field concerns. And when he's on the field, he's a top 5 running back in this class. I really don't have any doubts about that. And this is a total Belichick pick. He doesn't really care about your off-the-field stuff as long as you're going to show up on Sundays and be a good football player. And I think that's what they're getting in Ramondre Stevenson. I said they need another running back in here. You can't lean on Sony Michel to stay healthy. And Harris is good, but with the amount of times they're going to run the ball this year, I think they need a 1-2 punch there. And Ramondre Stevenson is a great fit. I talked about them maybe signing Le'Veon Bell. Well, Ramondre Stevenson kind of fits that role as a do-it-all 3-down back. Just got to stay on the field and put it all together in that aspect. But I actually, this was a W for the Patreon gang in my 7-round Patriots mock draft. I think we took Stevenson in like the 5th or 6th round for the exact reason I just described. And then you get Cam McGrone in the 5th round. The other thing I want to say about this Patriots draft is, look, man, Bill Belichick, let's face it, he's kind of done his own thing over the last 3 or 4 years. And for all of this talk about, we as analysts don't know better than these NFL coaches and GMs. Well, I think Bill Belichick might be the smartest man in the NFL from a football perspective, and he does not draft well. So for all this stuff about consensus opinion, trust your GMs, trust your coaches, turns out we actually do know some stuff, and here are the Patriots doing a little bit more consensus board drafting. And I think Bill Belichick maybe did take a step back because this does not look like your typical Belichick draft where he's reaching for that random linebacker in the 6th round. This really was textbook drafting based on how the media would have done it. And here you go, Cam McGrone, who a lot of people love, 4th, 5th round grade from me. You get him at the end of the 5th, and I just love how he plugs into this defense. I don't think he's a great cover player. That's why I was maybe a little bit lower on him. But Bill Belichick, that system does as good of a job as anybody of taking a Patrick Chung or Kyle Duggar, who I think takes a nice step up this year, taking them, bringing them down into the box and using them more of the cover linebacker, and let Cam McGrone focus on the run defense and spying the QB and blitzing, and that's where he's going to thrive. So I love that landing spot for Cam McGrone. I think he's going to be a hell of a football player for a 5th-round pick. And then the rest of their draft was kind of meh for me. Josh Bledsoe, I wasn't as high on as other people. He's got great ball skills. He's got a nice highlight reel, but his consistency in coverage and his tackling was so-so. But I think Belichick's like, we can coach him how to tackle. He's a football player. He's got good ball skills. Let's see if we can develop that coverage ability. And then William Sherman out of Colorado, just tackle depth. He's versatile. They like 6'3" offensive linemen. That's like their thing. They've hit really well with those. So just kind of fits that mold. And then Trey Nixon has some speed. We'll see if he makes the team. Potential long-term replacement for Nelson Aguilar. Probably a guy that can maybe return kicks and play special teams as well. Belichick loves those guys. So an A grade for me for the New England Patriots. Outstanding draft. Really exciting time to be a Patriots fan, and for me, an owner of Patriots Super Bowl futures. I think they actually have a chance, if not this year, over the next 2 or 3 years. And excited to see Mac Jones here as well, and kind of get an opportunity to prove people wrong because he really was disrespected. Then we got the New York Jets draft here. The Zach Wilson pick was easy. I love it. It's an A grade. He was second best overall player, based on positional value or whatever. So they did the right thing. They take Zach Wilson. We don't need to dive into that. But what are they doing to support this new regime? They trade up for Elijah Vera Tucker. And I'm going to be honest, man, a lot of people loved Elijah Vera Tucker. I will factor that in. But personally, I don't see it as a top 20 player in this class. Certainly not a guard worth trading up for. He's a really good football player. He was my number one guard. You're going to be upgrading this offensive line, and you had a ton of draft picks. So it's not the end of the world. It's just, simply put, not a move I would have done. And personally, I would have gone with a Christian Darrisaw there. I would have stayed put, see how the board played out. I think Vera Tucker, Darrisaw, Rayshawn Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins, I think, would have been the best fit there if they just stayed put, take him at 23. So I will be a little bit critical of that. It's not the end of the world. We'll see how well he develops there. They take Elijah Moore, the top of the 2nd round, good value. You do have a slot receiver, a damn good one already. So interesting to see what they're going to do with Crowder there, or is Moore going to not see the field as much early on? Those are the only notes on that. But great playmaker, outstanding guy with the ball in his hands. This Shanahan system coming in here, you get a great catch and run guy, kind of in the Deebo Samuel breath. Definitely a different style player, but kind of, I think, what they're looking for there. And then they take Michael Carter in the 4th round. Great spot to take a running back like this. I don't know if he's ever going to be a feature back, but he's going to be an awesome complement to Tevin Coleman. Can definitely get the edge on these wide zones and be a reliable 3rd down back as well when they go to more traditional drop backs. They take Jamian Sherwood out of Auburn. I'm not really sure why they spent this high of a pick on him. He was a true junior coming out, but he came out and ran a 4.76 40. Was not a coverage player at Auburn really at all. Excellent tackler. Could be a really good special teamer for them. I'm curious to see how they develop him. Is it as a strong safety? Is it in the Jaquiski Tart role of this defense that they're clearly looking for as they take, to me, a better safety prospect in Hamza Nasir-Dean later? But maybe Jamian Sherwood, a guy they see as a linebacker. But I just had him as a special teamer on my draft board, so a little bit early to take him is what it is. They take another Michael Carter. I love this split. You got Michael Carter from UNC, Michael Carter from Duke. Would love to see these guys go at it in practice. You can't really make this stuff up, honestly, but they have a type there. Between Javelin Guidry, Brian Poole was actually my pro comp for Michael Carter. I thought there was better slot players available, but I'm not going to knock them for it. I think it was just decent value, good overall pick, nothing crazy. And then they do take Jason Pinnock, a pick I really like. He's a high upside corner, has a lot of development to do, but he definitely fits this system as a guy that can press and do a little bit of everything that I think Saleh has really adapted. We mentioned Nasir El-Dean, good value. They're clearly looking for some sort of a bandit type of safety here because between him and Sherwood, you're looking at that sort of linebacker hybrid type of dime defender. But good value there for Nasir El-Dean. I definitely was not as high on him and not super stunned to see him fall to early 6th round. I love the Brandon Echols pick, man. this is the type of athlete you gamble on in the 6th round, taking advantage to me of a really deep class. Maybe not so much a scheme fit. He's just a true man-to-man corner, but could be a guy that they put in dime sets against the other team's speedster. For example, say they're playing the Browns against Anthony Schwartz and just say, you have the speed to run with this guy. In a lot of ways, like Jonathan Jones has developed for the Patriots. So I do like that pick quite a lot. And then they take Jonathan Marshall, one of my guys, in the 6th round. So despite some of those earlier reaches, you can really balance it out with these later round picks, to be honest. Sneaky good call by me. I had Jonathan Marshall over Marvin Wilson, who went undrafted. So I will toot my own horn, ring my own bell on that one. But this guy he blows shit up. That's his job. He has great get-off and power, has no idea what he's doing out there. So they can coach that up. But as a developmental piece, as a guy that may be a plug in there occasionally for rushing downs, I think he can make an impact down the road. So a B+ grade for the New York Jets. Just the Vera Tucker thing for me is definitely something I'm going to be critical of. We'll see how well he develops. I'm going to stick to my own evaluation to a certain light there, but I don't think it's a terrible move. And then just a couple reaches in the middle there, maybe knocking it just a touch, but at the end of the day, it was a very good draft for the New York Jets, and going to end up with a B+ grade. So there is the AFC East, another good division as far as these drafts go. A lot of good drafts this year. We're going to move on to the NFC South next. Appreciate you guys for watching. Please do hit that like button down below. Make sure you comment. Let me know your opinions as well. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you soon. Peace.